Today I'm going to start trying to replace my rake arm. I got a used one that has not been broken or welded before, luckily. This is just like the one that I'm taking off. If you notice how off center mine is, so kind of between the two there. One side's welded kind of forward and away, and the other side's barely brushing the machine when it sweeps. So I'm going to try to replace the rake. Of course, first things first, make sure you turn out the breaker and pull the plug. I'll pull that in a moment before I get started. One of the biggest things you gotta have that I went out and bought today is a 5/16 3-foot long threaded rod. You need to put that on your spring tube right here. You got one end up here, put it through the hole, put a nut on the other side. Same with the other end, because you wanna be able to hold that spring tube how it is, because you're gonna be disconnecting the rake arm right here. And if it wasn't for this spring tube on here being connected to the rake, it would go flying. Luckily, you have a stop on each side right here. There's one on the other side as well. So whenever the rake sweeps forward, it stops and keeps that spring tube from flying out. But I'm gonna be loosening those up so I won't have that luxury anymore. So you need to put the rod through there and capture the spring tube. Then of course you have to come down here to where the rake arm itself attaches. There's 2 pins in there with X washers on this side. Go ahead and pull those and pull the pins out. That'll disconnect the rake board and arm itself from the rake arm assembly. After you have all that done, the main thing holding it on is right here. There's 2 Allen head screws sticking out the side here. There's a stud inside of that holds the rake arm that just pivots back and forth on it. So you have to take those 2 guys out right here, and then the rake arm itself will just about be ready to come out. And because of the location with my electrical box, I'm gonna have to pick it up from behind and pull it out the top. I'm also gonna have to disconnect where the rake shotgun attaches to that arm right there to get that out of the way. And I'll have to pull it down underneath that and out through the top. Otherwise, I'd have to disconnect the electrical box, and this is probably an easier route. Okay, I got the spring disconnected. There's a big spring on each side that helps have the rake drop, but I pulled the spring off. I disconnected the shotgun mechanism from there, and the spring tube is also disconnected. And now I've got just 1 bolt on each side holding the 2 studs in place that hold the rake arm in place. Right now it's just free. I got both pins pulled out of the bottom on both sides. And the shock on the other side, there's a linkage on there that goes through at the bottom that I had to disconnect because I'm going to transfer all that over to the new rake arm. But it's just about ready to come off. Okay, got the rake out. That was a little bit more work than I thought it was going to be. Had to take a few more things off that I'd forgotten. The rake crank rod, had to disconnect that, and also the cushion rod on the other side, I had to take that off because I couldn't get the rake arm out without that one side being detached. But got everything out. Now I just need to transfer a few things over. You can look at that thing and see how crooked the weld is on that thing. But that was done sometime back in 60s or 70s, I'm guessing, since this machine hadn't been used in quite a while. So it held up, it was just crooked. So got the new one out on the lane. Just got to transfer a few things over and we'll start reassembly. Okay, quick update here. Reassembly is just the opposite of the disassembly. I got the new rake arm in place already. Got the 2 bolts on the side. Got the rake hook back up down below. And now I'm just reconnecting everything as I took it apart. Now I took both cushion lift rods off both sides because that I found was in the way when I was trying to reassemble everything. And another thing in this old rake was a jetback or A2 converted. So it's got this bracket on here, and the one that I have is off a Model A. Doesn't have that bracket. So I'm gonna have to drill a hole and transfer this guy over and then continue reassembly. Here's the attach point for the rake shock on the other side, and you see this is a rake that is never converted, so I'm gonna have to knock this roll pin out of here, and the bolt will take its place, go through there and hold that bushing in place. So then after that, I have to drill a hole in the side here to mount my bracket on there for the shock to mount. Okay, I've got the rake back on. Got the shock system on the other side drilled up and installed. I got the sweep and everything adjusted over here. One thing you have to do when you get done is probably adjust both your stops right here. And on the other side, make sure you don't have a gap underneath each one. You want them to both fit tight and hit cleanly on both sides at the same time. Because if you have one hitting and not the other, you're going to stress out the one side of the rake arm. It's going to tend to crack easier. Also right here, I've got it at full forward on the 4-to-1. And you want to check your gap right up here in the hook between this block and the hook right there. It's kind of hard to see, but there's the block that goes back and forth and the hook that drops down. You don't want too big of a gap in there. You know, maybe 1/4 inch, maybe even a little bit less. But just play with it. But you don't want that gap too big, or else your rake is going to slam forward all the time before it actually starts slowing down. And that'll also make your rake arms stress out and crack easier too. But anyways, got everything back together. Now, I guess time to go throw a few balls.